The auction block in Redemption Creek wasn't meant for human souls, but desperation made merchants of them all. Eleanor Hartwell stood at the edge of the crowd, her black mourning dress dusty from 3 days of travel. The fabric hung loose on her frame. Grief and hunger had stolen the curves her late husband once admired. In her gloved hand, she clutched 3 silver dollars. Everything she owned in this world. Going once for this fine specimen. The auctioneer's voice cracked through the afternoon heat. Strong back, good teeth, never been broken to saddle if you catch my meaning. Laughter rippled through the crowd of ranch owners and madams. Eleanor's stomach turned as she watched the boy on the platform. He couldn't have been more than 19. All gangly limbs and sun-bronzed skin, his wrists bound with rope. His eyes, pale blue like a winter sky, held a terror that reminded her of a caged animal. $2! Someone shouted. The boy flinched. Eleanor didn't plan it, didn't think. Her hand shot up. $3. The crowd went silent, then erupted in hoots and whistles. Well, well! The widow Hartwell breaks her silence. The auctioneer grinned. Sold to the lady in black. Before we continue with Eleanor and this young cowboy's unexpected journey, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and give this video a like. It truly means so much to us and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. Also, I'm curious, where are you listening from today? 20 minutes later, Eleanor sat across from the boy in her borrowed wagon, watching him rub his freed wrists. He hadn't spoken a word since she'd signed the papers and cut his bonds. "What's your name?" she asked softly. He stared at the wagon floor. James Coulter, Ma'am." "You can look at me, James. I'm not going to hurt you." Those blue eyes lifted, filled with confusion and lingering fear. "Why'd you buy me? Everyone knows what them purchases are for." Eleanor felt heat crawl up her neck. "I have a ranch. 40 acres outside of town. My husband died 4 months ago, and I can't work it alone. I need help, not that. You paid $3 for a ranch hand." "I paid $3 to keep you off that block." She met his gaze steadily. "Whatever you were before today, whatever brought you there, it doesn't matter. You work honest, you eat, you don't want to stay, you can leave after harvest. No chains, no expectations." James swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "I ain't never met anyone like you, Mrs. Hartwell. Call me Eleanor, and I suspect we're both strangers to kindness these days." The Hartwell ranch sat in a valley where the prairie met the foothills, a small cabin with a leaning barn and fields choked with weeds. Eleanor had managed to keep the animals alive, 2 horses, a milk cow, some chickens, but the crops her husband had planted were dying. James took one look and whistled low. "This ain't good, Ma. Eleanor." "I know." She climbed down from the wagon, her shoulders sagging. "I've tried, but I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Irrigation's all blocked up, and these plants needed thinning weeks ago." He walked into the field, running his hands over the struggling corn stalks with surprising gentleness. "But we can save some of it. Maybe half." "We?" He turned, and for the first time, she saw him almost smile. "You bought me for $3. Figured I ought to be worth at least one good harvest." They fell into a rhythm over the following weeks. James worked from dawn until dusk, repairing the irrigation channels, mending fences, coaxing life back into the dying fields. Eleanor cooked, tended the animals, and learned to help with the heavier work when James would allow it. "You're gonna hurt yourself." He protested when she tried to lift a fence post. "I'm stronger than I look." "Didn't say you weren't strong, said you're gonna hurt yourself." He took the post from her hands and his fingers brushed hers. Both of them froze at the contact. Eleanor pulled away first, her heart hammering. I'll go start supper." She felt his eyes on her back as she retreated to the cabin. At night, James slept in the barn. Eleanor had offered him the small back room, but he'd refused. "Wouldn't be proper," he'd said, ducking his head. "Besides, I'm used to hay. Lots softer than some places I've bedded down." She didn't press him on his past, didn't ask how a boy his age ended up on an auction block, but sometimes, in the quiet moments, he'd share small pieces. "My pa died when I was 12, he said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. "Mama tried to keep the homestead, but the bank took it. She got sick that winter and—" He cleared his throat. "After that I just drifted, worked where I could, got on the wrong side of some men in Silver City who said I owed 'em for room and board. They put me on that block to settle the debt." Eleanor's hands clenched in her lap. "That's not legal. Legal don't mean much when you got no one to speak for you." He glanced at her. "Why'd you really buy me, Eleanor? $3 might not be much to some folks, but I know it's all you had." She was quiet for a long moment, "Because I remembered what it felt like to be helpless, to be treated like property instead of a person. Your husband, he wasn't always cruel, but grief over our stillborn son changed him, made him hard. He died in a riding accident before things could get worse." She looked at James directly. "I saw that same terror in your eyes on that platform, the same look I used to see in my mirror. I couldn't walk away." James reached over slowly, telegraphing his movement, and laid his rough hand over hers. "You're not property, you're a person, and you saved me." "We saved each other," she whispered. The days grew shorter as summer faded into autumn. The fields turned gold, and James worked alongside Eleanor to bring in the harvest. His body had filled out with good food and honest work, his shoulders broadening, muscles hardening from the labor. Eleanor found herself watching him more than she should, the way sweat dampened his shirt, the way he'd pushed dark hair from his eyes, the rare smiles that made her heart skip. She was falling for him. A boy 10 years her junior. A boy she'd bought for $3. The realization terrified her. "You're quiet tonight," James said one evening as they sat by the fire. The first frost had come, and the cabin felt small and intimate with just the two of them. "Just thinking." About? About how this can't last." She stared into the flames. "Winter's coming. The harvest is in. You'll want to move on, find proper work. I told you I ain't leaving." "James, do you want me to go?" His voice was rough. "Is that what this is? You trying to push me away 'cause you're scared?" "Scared of what?" "Of this." He moved closer, and she could smell sage and wood smoke on his skin. "Of feeling something for someone like me. Someone like you." Eleanor's voice shook. "James, you're good and kind and young and poor and bought." The bitterness in his voice cut her. "You think I don't know what folks would say? Widow Hartwell and her purchased boy? I don't care what people say. Then what are you scared of?" Eleanor stood abruptly, her chest tight. "I'm scared of wanting something I have no right to want. I'm scared of ruining you. I'm scared that I'm no better than those people at that auction, seeing you as something to possess." James rose too, and in the firelight, he looked older than his 19 years. "You see me as a person, Eleanor, you always have. That's why I love you." The words hung in the air between them. "You can't," she whispered. "Too late." He reached up slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and cupped her face with his work-roughened hand. "I love you. And I think you love me too. But you're too afraid to admit it." She was trembling. "James, I've been married. I know what happens between a man and woman. And you, I ain't never been with anyone." His thumb stroked her cheek. "That what worries you? That I don't know what I'm doing? I worry that you'll regret this, regret me. The only thing I'll regret is if I never try." He leaned in, his lips a breath away from hers. "Tell me to stop and I will. Tell me you don't want this, and I'll sleep in that barn and never speak of it again. But don't lie to me, Eleanor. Don't lie to yourself." She closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, James's inexperience evident in the careful way he held her. But then Eleanor's hands slid into his hair, and something broke loose in both of them. He pulled her closer, one arm wrapping around her waist, and the kiss deepened into something hungry and desperate. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, James rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight," Eleanor whispered. "Not in the barn. Here." She saw the flash of nervousness in his eyes, quickly masked by determination. "You sure?" "I'm sure." They moved to her bedroom, and Eleanor's hands shook as she began to unbutton James's shirt. He caught her fingers. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted, vulnerability naked on his face. "Then we'll learn together." She kissed him again, softer this time. "We'll go slow." As the night deepened, Eleanor guided James with gentle words and patient touches. When he trembled, she soothed him. When he hesitated, she encouraged him. And when they finally came together, she saw tears in his eyes. "I'll die before I hurt you," he gasped against her throat. "I know," she breathed. "I trust you." They moved together in the firelight, two damaged souls finding healing in each other's arms. It was clumsy and sweet and perfect in its imperfection. Afterward, James held her close, his heart hammering against her back. "You all right?" she asked softly. "Better than all right." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "Eleanor?" "Yes. I meant what I said. I love you. This ain't just... I don't know what city folk call it, but it ain't just that." She turned in his arms to face him. "I love you too. God help me, but I do." His smile could have lit the whole prairie. The peace lasted 3 weeks. Eleanor was in town for supplies when she saw him. Clayton Bradshaw, the man her father had tried to force her to marry before she'd run away, and married Thomas Hartwell instead. He was older now, greyer, but his eyes still held that same cruel gleam. "Eleanor Hartwell," he drawled, blocking her path. "Heard you were widowed. Shame about Thomas." "Excuse me." She tried to move past him. His hand shot out, gripping her arm hard enough to bruise. "Now that's no way to greet an old friend. Your father and I had an agreement, you know. You were supposed to be mine." "My father's dead, and I was never yours." "Well, now, that can be rectified." He leaned close, and she smelled whiskey on his breath. "I own half this county now, been buying up land, including the note on your little ranch. You're 3 months behind on payments." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "That's not possible. Bank's got the papers. You got 2 choices, Eleanor. Marry me or I foreclose and you're out on the street." His smile was a wolf's smile. "I'll even let you keep that pretty young thing you got working your place. Might enjoy watching him work." She jerked free and ran to the wagon, her heart pounding. When she got back to the ranch, James knew immediately something was wrong. "What happened?" She told him everything, about Clayton, about the debt, about the impossible choice. James's jaw clenched. "You ain't marrying him." "Oh, we'll lose everything." "Then we lose everything." He gripped her shoulders. "Eleanor, you hear me? You ain't going back to being someone's property. We'll figure something else out." "There is no something else. I have no money, no family, nowhere to go. You got me." His voice was fierce. "We'll leave, go west, start over. I'll work, you'll work, we'll make it together." "James? That's a fantasy." "No. What's a fantasy is thinking I'm going to stand by and let some bastard take you." He pulled her into his arms. "Together, Eleanor. That's what you said. We saved each other. So, we'll save each other again." She clung to him, wanting to believe, but Clayton Bradshaw wasn't a man who took no for an answer. 3 days later, he rode up to the ranch with 5 men. Eleanor and James were in the barn when they heard the horses. "Stay here," James said, reaching for the rifle. "No." Eleanor grabbed his arm. "If you shoot him, they'll hang you." If I don't, he'll take you." They walked out together to face Clayton. He sat astride a black stallion, looking down at them with contempt. "Time's up, Eleanor. I got the papers right here. Sheriff's on his way to enforce the foreclosure." He smiled. "Unless you've reconsidered my offer." "Go to hell," Eleanor said. Clayton's expression darkened. "That's a mistake." He nodded to his men. "Take her." Two men dismounted and started toward Eleanor. James stepped in front of her, raising the rifle. "Don't! You gonna shoot all of us, boy?" Clayton laughed. "You ain't got the stones. Try me." For a moment, everything hung in balance. Then Eleanor did something that shocked everyone. She dropped to her knees in the dirt. "What are you doing?" James's voice cracked with panic. Eleanor looked up at Clayton, her eyes blazing. "You want to humiliate me? Fine. I'll beg. I'll get on my knees and beg you to leave us alone. But that boy has done nothing wrong. This ranch is all we have. Please." The word tasted like ash. "Please don't take it from us." "Eleanor, no!" James screamed, trying to pull her up. His voice broke with anguish. "Don't do this! Get up! Get up!" But she stayed down, staring at Clayton. Something shifted in the man's face. Maybe it was seeing the proud Eleanor Hartwell on her knees. Maybe it was the raw pain in James's voice. Or maybe, somewhere deep down, he remembered he used to be a better man. "Get up," Clayton said quietly. Eleanor didn't move. "I said get up." He dismounted, and James tensed, but Clayton just stood there, looking older and tired. "Your father and I, we weren't friends. He owed me money, and I called the debt when he died. The banknote is real, but—" He pulled papers from his coat. "But I can forgive it. Call it even for something your father did for me once, long time ago." "Why?" Eleanor's voice shook. "Because I just watched the woman I thought I wanted debase herself in the dirt, and all I feel is shame." He tore the papers in half. "You love him?" She looked at James, who was staring at her with tears streaming down his face. "Yes, then you were never mine to take." Clayton remounted his horse. "We're done here, boys." As they rode away, James hauled Eleanor to her feet and crushed her against him. "Don't you ever do that again," he choked out. "Don't you ever kneel for anyone, you hear me? You're worth more than that. You're worth everything." "I know." She held him tight. "But you're worth it too. You're worth everything to me." They stood there in the dust, holding each other as the sun set over the mountains. That night, James asked her to marry him. "Ain't got a ring," he said as they sat on the porch. "Ain't got much of anything except my heart and these two hands, but they're yours if you'll have them." Eleanor took his face in her hands. "I've had jewelry and fine things. They didn't make me happy. You make me happy. Yes, James Coulter, I'll marry you." They wed a week later in the small church in Redemption Creek. Eleanor wore a simple blue dress, and James wore his cleanest shirt. The preacher raised an eyebrow at their ages, but the love shining between them was undeniable. "Do you, Eleanor, take this man?" "I do. Let me finish the—" "I do," she said again, smiling through tears. James laughed, and it was the freest sound she'd ever heard from him. "I do too. Whatever he was going to say, I do." When James kissed his bride, the small gathering cheered. 5 years later, Eleanor stood in the same spot where she'd first seen their ranch. But everything looked different now. The fields were lush and green, the barn rebuilt and strong. 2 horses grazed in the pasture, and a small child sat atop one of them, James's hand steadying her. "Mama, look!" Their daughter Mary waved enthusiastically. "I see you, sweetheart," Eleanor called, her hand resting on her swollen belly, another child on the way. James lifted Mary down and walked over to Eleanor, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You all right?" "Better than all right." She leaned into him, this man who'd been a frightened boy on an auction block and was now the best father and husband she could imagine. "I love you. I love you too, forever and always, Eleanor Coulter." She watched their daughter chase butterflies through the wildflowers, and thought about that day she'd held up $3 silver, the best money she'd ever spent, not because she'd bought a ranch hand, but because she'd saved a soul, and in doing so, saved her own. Sometimes the best things in life cost almost nothing, and sometimes they're worth everything. The winter of 1872 came early and harsh. Snow piled 3 feet deep around the cabin, and the wind howled through the valley like a living thing. Eleanor stood at the window, watching James trudge through the drifts toward the barn, and felt the familiar flutter in her belly. 4 months along now, and the baby was active. "You should be resting," came a voice from behind her. Eleanor turned to see Doc Matthews setting his bag on the table. The old physician had ridden out to check on her despite the weather. "I rest plenty. James hardly lets me do anything anymore." Doc chuckled. "That boy loves you fierce. Speaking of which," he gestured to the chair, "let's have a look at you and that baby." After the examination, Doc's expression was serious. "Eleanor, I'm going to be straight with you. Given what happened with your first pregnancy, and your age now, I'm only 32, which is considered advanced for childbearing, and this baby is sitting differently than normal. Could be breech, could be twins, hard to say this early." He met her eyes. "You need to prepare James for the possibility that this might not go smoothly." Eleanor's hand went to her stomach. "I can't lose this baby, Doc. James would never forgive himself. He thinks he's made me fragile somehow. You're one of the strongest women I know. But strength doesn't always matter when it comes to childbirth." He squeezed her hand. "I'm not saying it'll go wrong, just saying you need to be realistic." That night, Eleanor lay in James's arms, listening to his heartbeat, trying to find the words. "You're thinking too loud," he murmured, his hand stroking her hair. "Doc says the pregnancy might be complicated." James went rigid. "What?" "He thinks the baby might be positioned wrong, or there might be 2. He can't be sure yet." She turned to face him. "James, I need you to promise me something." "Anything. If it comes down to choosing between me and the baby, no." He sat up, his face pale in the moonlight. "No, Eleanor, don't ask me that." "James, I can't lose you." His voice broke. "I won't survive it, you understand me? That baby is made of us both, and I'll love it with everything I got. But you're my whole world. If something happens, you tell Doc to save you. That's not negotiable." Eleanor pulled him back down, holding him as he trembled. All right, I promise." But as James fell into restless sleep, Eleanor stared at the ceiling and prayed she'd never have to make him break that promise. The snow melted in March, revealing a world reborn. James spent long days preparing the fields for spring planting, and Eleanor felt the baby grow stronger inside her. Doc's concerns faded as the pregnancy progressed normally, until the night Eleanor woke to find blood on the sheets. "James!" Her scream brought him running from where he'd been stoking the fire. He took one look and went white. "I'm getting Doc. It's midnight, and there's still ice on the roads. I don't care if there's fire on the roads. I'm getting Doc." He pulled on his boots with shaking hands. "You stay in bed. Don't move. I'll be back in an hour." He rode like a demon through the darkness, and later he wouldn't remember the journey, only the prayer he repeated over and over. "Please, please, please." Doc Matthews arrived to find Eleanor propped against pillows, her face grey with pain. James paced like a caged animal while the physician examined her. "The baby's turned," Doc finally said, "putting pressure on everything. That's what caused the bleeding." He looked at Eleanor. "You're going to need to stay in bed until this child decides to come. Complete bed rest, no getting up except for necessities." "For how long?" "Could be a week, could be 2 months. Baby will come when it's ready." James nodded immediately. "Done, whatever she needs." "James, the planting. Hang the planting." He knelt beside the bed, taking her hand. "You hear me, Eleanor? Nothing matters except you and this baby. Nothing." Doc left them with instructions and laudanum for the pain. As dawn broke, James sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. "I did this to you," he whispered. "What? Put you in danger. I should have been more careful, should have—" "James Coulter, you look at me." Eleanor waited until his red-rimmed eyes met hers. "I wanted this baby. I want this family with you. Whatever happens, it's not your fault, it's just life. I can't lose you. You won't. I'm too stubborn to die." He laughed, despite the tears on his face. "That you are." The weeks that followed tested them both. Eleanor chafed at being bedridden, while James worked himself to exhaustion trying to do everything. He planted the fields, tended the animals, cooked the meals, and sat with Eleanor every night reading to her from her favorite books. "You're going to collapse," she said one evening, watching him sway with fatigue. "I'm fine." "You're not. James, we need help." "Can't afford help." "Then ask for it. Go into town and ask. People will come." He looked horrified. "I ain't begging. It's not begging. It's community. It's what neighbors do." She reached for his hand. "Please, I can't watch you kill yourself." The next day, James swallowed his pride and rode into Redemption Creek. He stood in the general store, hat in hand, and said the hardest words of his life. "My wife's having a difficult pregnancy. I'm falling behind on the ranch work. If anyone could spare a few hours to help, I'd be grateful." The store went quiet. James prepared for rejection, for mockery. Instead, old Mr. Henderson spoke up. "I'll come by tomorrow. Been meaning to check on Eleanor anyway." "My boys can help with the heavy work," added Mrs. Chen. One by one, the townspeople volunteered. By the end of the week, there was a rotation of neighbors, helping with everything from plowing to cooking. Even Clayton Bradshaw sent 2 of his ranch hands for a day. "Folks are good when you let them be," Eleanor said when James told her. "I never had folks before," he admitted. "Never had a place I belonged. Still getting used to the idea that we got a community. We do now, and when this baby comes, they'll celebrate with us." In late May, Eleanor woke before dawn with contractions. She gripped James's arm, and he was instantly awake. "Is it time?" "I think so." He rode for Doc Matthews while Mrs. Chen, who'd been staying in the spare room for the past week, prepared everything. By the time James returned with the doctor, Eleanor's contractions were coming hard and fast. "Out," Doc ordered James. "You'll just be in the way." "I ain't leaving her." "James, please," Eleanor gasped between pains. "I need to focus. Go." He went, but only as far as the porch, where he paced and prayed and died 1,000 deaths with every scream that came from inside. The sun rose. Noon came and went. Afternoon faded toward evening. Finally, when James thought he'd go mad, he heard it. A baby's cry. He burst through the door to find Doc Matthews holding a red-faced, squalling infant. "You got a son," Doc said with a tired smile. But James only had eyes for Eleanor. She lay pale and exhausted against the pillows, but she was smiling. "Is she—" "I'm fine," Eleanor whispered. "We're both fine." James stumbled to the bed and dropped to his knees, burying his face against her shoulder and sobbing. She ran her fingers through his hair, while their son cried lustily in Doc's arms. "You want to hold him?" Doc asked. James looked up, eyes wide. "I don't know how." "You'll learn." The doctor placed the baby carefully in James's arms. "Support the head. That's it." James stared down at the tiny face, the dark hair, the miniature fingers that wrapped around his thumb. "He's so small. He'll grow. They always do." Doc packed his bag. "I'll be back tomorrow to check on them both." "Mrs. Chen, you'll stay." "Of course." After everyone left them alone, James sat on the edge of the bed, still holding his son, while Eleanor watched them both with love shining in her eyes. "What should we name him?" she asked. James was quiet for a long moment. "Thomas." After your first husband, the man who brought you here, even if it was hard, and Matthew for the doc who saved you both. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Thomas Matthew Coulter, it's perfect. Like you. James leaned over carefully, kissing her forehead. Like our family. Summer passed in a blur of sleepless nights and wonder. James proved to be a natural father, patient and gentle with Thomas, even when exhausted. He'd walk the floor at 3 in the morning, singing soft lullabies in a surprisingly good voice, while Eleanor watched from the bed with her heart full. But as autumn approached, a new problem emerged. James had been so focused on the baby and Eleanor that he'd neglected to harvest half the fields. The corn was overripe, the wheat was falling, and they'd lose a significant portion of the crop if he didn't work fast. "I'll help," Eleanor said. "You just had a baby." 3 months ago. I'm healed and strong. James, we can't afford to lose this harvest. We're still catching up from last year when I was on bed rest. He knew she was right, but every instinct screamed against putting her back to work so soon. What about Thomas? Mrs. Chen's offered to watch him during the day. She loves that baby almost as much as we do. So they worked side by side again, racing against the first frost. Eleanor bundled wheat while James cut it, her muscles remembering the rhythm from the year before. It was hard, exhausting work, but there was joy in it too. In laboring together under the wide sky, knowing their son slept safely nearby. They were in the north field, nearly done, when they heard the horses. James straightened, his hand automatically going to the rifle he now kept close. 6 riders approached, and Eleanor's blood ran cold when she recognized the man in front. Marshal Crenshaw from Silver City. "James Coulter," the marshal called out, "need to have a word with you." James set down his scythe slowly. "What about?" "About the debt you owed in Silver City, the men you ran out on." "I didn't run out. They put me on an auction block illegally. I was sold." "That's one version. They got another. They say you stole money and ran." The marshal pulled out papers. "Got a warrant here. Need you to come back and face charges." Eleanor stepped forward. "That's a lie. He was sold to pay their false debt. I bought him myself." "That's so?" The marshal's eyes were cold. "You got papers proving that purchase?" Eleanor's stomach sank. The auction had been barely legal as it was. There'd been no official documentation, just the auctioneer's word and the exchange of money. "Didn't think so." The marshal dismounted. "James Coulter, you're under arrest." "No!" Eleanor moved between them. "You can't take him. We have a baby. We have—" "Step aside, ma'am." James put his hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "It's all right." "It's not all right." She turned to him, desperate. "They'll hang you for a theft you didn't commit." "They won't." He cupped her face, his eyes fierce. "Because I didn't do it, and the truth always comes out. You take care of Thomas. I'll be back." "James." He kissed her, hard and fast. "I love you. Remember that. Whatever happens, I love you." They shackled him and put him on a horse. Eleanor stood in the field, watching them ride away with her husband, and felt her world crumbling. Mrs. Chen found her there an hour later, still standing like a statue. "Eleanor, honey, come inside." "They took him. I know. But standing here won't bring him back. We need to think. We need a plan." Eleanor turned to her, and Mrs. Chen saw something dangerous in her eyes. "I'm going to Silver City." "You can't. It's a 3-day ride, and you've got a baby." "Then take care of my baby." Eleanor started toward the house, moving with purpose now, "because I'm not losing James. Not like this. Not ever." She rode out at dawn, leaving Thomas crying in Mrs. Chen's arms. It broke her heart, but not as much as losing James would. She pushed her horse hard, stopping only when necessary, and reached Silver City in 2.5 days. The jail was a squat building on the edge of town. Eleanor marched in, trail-worn and fierce, and demanded to see James. The guard laughed. "Visiting hours?" She slapped money on the desk. "Now." He took her to a cell where James sat on a narrow cot, his head in his hands. When he looked up and saw her, he jumped to his feet. "Eleanor, what are you doing here? Where's Thomas?" "With Mrs. Chen. I'm getting you out." "You can't. They're saying I stole $500. Then we'll prove you didn't." She gripped the bars. "James, I didn't buy you for $3 just to lose you to a lie. We're going to fight this." Over the next 3 days, Eleanor became a woman possessed. She tracked down everyone who'd been at the auction. She found the auctioneer who confirmed James had been sold legally to pay a fabricated debt. She dug through records and found the men who'd accused James had a history of this scam, buying up drifters, creating false debts, then selling them or extorting money. She presented everything to the judge the day before James's trial. "This is compelling, Mrs. Coulter," the judge said, "but it's still your word against theirs." "Then let me testify. Let James testify. Look at him. Does he look like a thief?" The trial was quick. James took the stand and told his story simply and honestly. Eleanor testified about buying him, about his character, about everything. The men who'd accused him swaggered and lied, but Eleanor had found one more thing, a witness who'd seen the men plant money in James's bag to frame him. When the verdict came down, not guilty, Eleanor nearly collapsed with relief. James walked out of that courthouse a free man, and Eleanor threw herself into his arms. "I told you I'd get you back," she said against his chest. "You saved me again." He pulled back to look at her. "You rode 3 days, left our baby, fought for me. I'll always fight for you. That's what love means." They rode home together, and when they crested the hill and saw their ranch, saw Mrs. Chen on the porch holding Thomas, James started to cry. "I got a family," he said wonderingly. "I really got a family." "You always did," Eleanor said. "From the moment I paid $3. You were mine, and I was yours. That's never going to change." The years flowed like the creek through their valley, sometimes rushing, sometimes gentle, but always moving forward. Thomas grew into a sturdy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determination. A daughter, Clara, followed 2 years later, then another son, William, 2 years after that. The ranch prospered. James became known throughout the county as a fair dealer and hard worker. But Eleanor noticed the shadows in his eyes some mornings, the way he'd wake from nightmares, gasping, and reach for her to make sure she was real. "Talk to me," she said one night after he startled awake. "It's stupid." "It's not. Talk to me." He was quiet for a long time. "I still dream about that auction block sometimes. Still feel the rope on my wrists. And then I wake up here with you and our children in this home we built, and I can't believe it's real. I keep waiting for someone to take it away." Eleanor took his face in her hands. "James Coulter, you listen to me. You are not that scared boy anymore. You're a man, a husband, a father. You've earned every bit of this life. No one can take it from you. You could leave. Never. You could die. Eventually, but not today, and not any day soon if I have anything to say about it." She kissed him softly. "We're growing old together, you and me. That's the plan. I like that plan." In the spring of 1880, they stood together at the edge of their expanded property, 80 acres now, with a larger house and a barn that didn't lean. Thomas was 10, Clara was 8, and William was 6. They were watching their children play in the creek. "Hard to believe it's been almost 11 years, Eleanor said. "Best $3 ever spent." She laughed. "You weren't worth $3. You were worth everything. Same goes for you." He pulled her close. "Hey, Eleanor." "Yes? I'm glad you bought me." "Me too, James. Me too." Years later, when Thomas grew up and asked his father about the scar on his wrist, the faint mark left by rope, James told him the truth, about the auction block, about his mother's courage, about the 3 silver dollars that changed 2 lives. "So Mama really bought you?" Thomas asked, wide-eyed. "She did, and I spent every day after that trying to be worth the price." James looked over at Eleanor, who was teaching Clara to can preserves. Turns out I didn't need to try. She loved me already. That's romantic, Clara said, having overheard. When I grow up, I want a love story like yours and Mama's. Eleanor came over, wiping her hands on her apron. What you should want, my darling, is a partner who sees you as a person, someone who respects your strength and supports your dreams. The romance is easy. The respect, that's what lasts. She caught James's eye, and they shared a smile that held everything. All the struggle, all the love, all the years of choosing each other every single day. That night, after the children were asleep, James and Eleanor sat on their porch, watching fireflies dance over the fields. No regrets? Eleanor asked. Not a single one. You? Just one. He looked at her in alarm. What? I should have bid $4. You were worth at least $4. James laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his chair, and Eleanor joined him, their joy echoing across the prairie they'd built their life upon. Some love stories start with grand gestures and sweeping declarations. Others start with $3 silver, a desperate woman, and a frightened boy. But all the best ones, the ones that last, start with two people seeing each other as they truly are, and choosing each other anyway. Every single day. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Eleanor and James's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.